Board voting meeting. Will everyone please stand and salute the flag and have a brief moment of silence? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Allison, will you please do the roll call?
Yes. Mr. Conway,
Here.
Mr. Gazy,
Here.
Mrs. Job, Mr. Metrosky,
Here.
Mrs. Miller, Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mrs. Savage,
Here.
Mrs. Shearer is absent, Mr. Thomas is absent. 7 members present.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We did have 2 brief executive sessions, one on August the 2nd and one tonight regarding personnel and legal problems, or personnel and legal issues, no problems. Informational items.
I'd just like to throw up to, coming in tonight, I noticed how nice the entranceway looks, and driving around. The maintenance crew and the custodians are doing a great job in the last 3 weeks to get it ready for school, and I think sometimes they go unnoticed for all the work that they do to get the school up and running, so I'd like to acknowledge them and thank them for what they did to get us ready.
Thanks, Robin. Well said. We don't have any recognition of visitors. No one signed up for tonight. Discussion and action on board minutes for June 22nd, June 21st, and July 13th.
So moved.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Financial matters.
Recommend approval of the financial reports 3.1 through 3.8.
So moved.
Second. A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those pass.
Recommend approval of the financial matters new business 4.1 through 4.3.
So moved.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those pass also. Federal programs. Dr. Nedley.
Yes, so in front of you, I placed this year's allocation and how they will be distributed. On the third page of the packet, you will see our percentage of poverty levels that were calculated by the federal programs e-grant system. If you notice at the top, that would be the poverty level without the CEP multiplier, and the bottom table is the one with the CEP multiplier. So you can see with that multiplier, it does increase those poverty percentages in each school, where then 3 of our schools are 100% poverty level, and that's their increase from last year to 84%. It was 77% last year. So that was the information we give you for that. Then on the next page, you can see our allocation this year. Remember, these are preliminary allocations that they give us. We don't get our final allocation until February, March of next year. So we're very conservative on how we do spend our money at the very beginning. Our allocation is $962,573. That's up a lot substantially from last year, which was only in the 700,000. And you can see how everything is dispersed there.
Lenny, can I ask you on that? So I understand underneath that if they're in our areas, so like Aquinas is across
So
the,
you're on page 5.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
I thought that's when I flipped the page. I thought we only paid if our students went to that school, and if,
So that's correct. So
Okay.
these are the children that are in our district that go to these non-public schools. So each, beginning in February, March, I send out letters to the non-public schools, which I did attach. The last page that you see in your attachments there is our procedures on how I communicate with non-public schools. I send out them their intentions to participate. The schools that want to participate get back with me and tell me, and then they must provide me a list of our students that attend their school. I do not get students' names, I only get addresses.
okay.
And then I have our PINS coordinator check the addresses to make sure they're within our per school district, and then you go from there.
So on that, we only pay for transportation up to so many miles, correct?
10 miles.
10 miles.
10,
Beyond the borders. Oh, so it has to
From
go
the
like to the furthest point, so
Furthest point.
it would go to the Delmont line and it's Mother of Sorrows is 7 miles down the road, so we have to pay for it. Okay.
So these are the numbers per school. And remember, Westmoreland Christian Academy has not participated for many, many years, but they did reach out last minute and said they did want to participate, which I did have to allow. And so they have 7 students attending there that they want to receive Title I funds for. But as you can see, 4 of the schools are with the Diocese of Greensburg, and that's typically normal there.
Right,
And you do see that they get quite a lot of funds there.
Yeah.
It is up from last year. We only had 18 students from the non-pubs. This year, we have 31 students participating now. So that increases that amount to $18,000 compared to last year was only $9,000.
Thanks.
And remember, and I know Frank always brings up Cider Charter Schools,
Right.
they submit their own grants to the state to get funds. On the next-
Dr. Nedley, while we're asking questions, just real quick, when I'm looking at page 3, and we have the non-public students, it's column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, column 5. I would have, so these the students that are going to these other non-public organizations? Because the total number of students in that column doesn't total up to the.
Correct, so that's gonna change, and this system calculates all this automatically.
Okay.
So I put in our original numbers with our student population that we get from our Primero Edge system through the state where it identifies free and reduced lunch and low-income students to us. I put our numbers in, I put the low-income numbers in from the non-public schools, and then this system with that CEP multiplier, it produces those numbers at the bottom automatically. So that's created by the system from the state automatically, that's not my input.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why you see those numbers increasing. The dummy way that I explain to people what a CEP multiplier is, because this is how I understand it be, it's almost like a standard deviation that they're using in the system where if there are maybe non-identified low-income households out there, that this multiplier between 1.4 and 1.6 gets added to our numbers that we input to the system. And then that gives us that deviation, that those may be the actual amounts for us.
Okay.
Yeah, so I hope that's
Thank you.
the dummiest way I can explain it, but that's how I understand it to be. Then moving on to page 6 is just about the homeless, because we do have to reserve funds for homeless there, in it as well as parent family engagement. Page 7 has the performance goals for us in Title I that I do collect data on throughout the school year. And then also on page 8 are the non-public goals that are written by the non-public school. They give me those to put in. And then page 9 is our equity plan that I have to submit to the state as well, in one hand. And that's based on the data of October 1st, 2022 snapshot of student population that I used to submit this grant with. So that's all of Title I. Okay, then going into Title II on page 10, our allocation this year is $113,981, which increased last year, which was 103 and some change. And you can see the distribution there. We use it for a class size reduction kindergarten teacher at Hutchinson, and also we had a reserve funds in here for our ATSI program at the high school, which we reserved for $1,000 to do some professional development there. Okay? And then moving on to the next page is the non-public school summary there. And you can see there's only one school there, that's Aquinas, because that's within our boundaries. And then the next page are the goals for us, and then page 13 is the goal for the non-public school. And then finally on page 14 is Title IV allocations, which dropped from last year, and we solely transferred those into Title I to support the salaries of our staff that we have. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Dr. Nagley.
the grant application this year.
Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Outside board reports. Central Westmoreland Career and Technical Center, Robin.
Last week, Mr. Lucia, Mr. Novikov, and Ms. DeLuca, they attended the PACTA Leadership Conference when we were recognized by Dr. Carrie Rowe, who is with the Department of Education, and she recognized, the PACTA is all the CTCs across the state, and she recognized what we're doing at the CTC with the road shows, with our new OBR, and actually asked people to, if they haven't seen what we're doing, to come out and see things that we're achieving at CTC. We were invited to go back to the ACTE National Conference to present the second part for Mr. Novikov's plan last year, building the bridge that I shared with you. We have right now 1,375 students scheduled to start for the school year, so we only have 25 spots left because we're at full capacity at 1,400.
That's more than last year, right?
Yeah, we're way up.
Yeah.
We will begin, we've received PD approval for aspiring educators, and we're only one of a handful of schools in PA that has achieved that certification. Our 2023 Perkins grant has been approved for $396,920, and that was submitted and approved, and we can start spending those funds, and we had an increase of $37,313. So we are moving on. We have our foundation at the CTCs can have their annual golf outing on September 22nd. It's our first one, so if anybody wants information on that, I have the information for you. And we start August 28th at school. That's what I have.
Thank you. Westmoreland IU, Heather is not here tonight. Greensburg-Salem Education Foundation, Lynn.
A new membership drive is being initiated at the beginning of the school year. The alumni picnic homecoming weekend is being planned, so good things.
That's a nice event. Thank you. Thank you. Greensburg Community Development Corporation, Brian.
So John Stafford is leaving as the executive director. He is heading back to college, well, I believe it's law school, and he leaves shortly. And we were able to find a great new executive director in Alec Italiano. And he has already started and hit the ground running and trying to plan some events, and kind of excited to have him on board. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Brian. Okay, committee reports. I don't believe there
Those are gonna be August 22nd, right? Like, that was gonna be our auxiliary discussion day.
Yeah, we'd
Correct.
like to schedule on August 22nd.
Yeah.
but we haven't had any recently
No.
to report on. Legal counsel.
No report.
All right,
That's what
Counselor.
I like, Lee.
Superintendent's report. Floor is yours, Doc.
Okay, all appointments are pending governmental clearances, medical and tuberculin tests as applicable. Under 9.1, recommend approval to accept the following retirement. Amy Brandt, elementary K-6 teacher, effective August 9th, 2023.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
I want to thank Ms. Brandt and wish her the best in retirement. Under resignations, recommend approval to accept the following resignations. Number 1.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
9.3, recommend approval to rescind the following appointments, number 1 and 2, without reading.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Recommend approval to grant the following unpaid leaves per board policy, 1, 2, and 3, without reading.
Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Okay, let me read through all of these before we get the vote. Recommend approval to hire the following professional staff for the positions listed under the terms negotiated in the contract with GSEA. Lindsay Swartz, math 7 through 12 teacher, master's step 8, $69,362. Heather Meyer, school counselor, master's plus 30, step 1, $61,460. Nicholas Demary, social studies, bachelor's, step 1, $55,060. Gabrielle Giovanco, art, bachelor's, step 1, $55,060. Margaret Oliver, music teacher, bachelor's, step 1, $55,060. Kristen Negich, special education teacher, master's, step 1, $58,460. Kayla Hutchison, school nurse, long-term permanent substitute, bachelor's, 80% of step 1, $44,048. Emily Shelley, elementary teacher, long-term permanent substitute, master's, 80% step 2, $47,897.60. Isabella Merlino, special education, long-term permanent substitute, bachelor's, 80% of step 1, $44,048. Madison McMichael, elementary teacher, long-term permanent substitute, bachelor's, 80% step 1, $44,048. Tracy Shaner, elementary teacher, long-term permanent substitute, bachelor's, 80% step 1, $44,048.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Allison, will you please do a roll call?
Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Mr. Gazy,
Yes.
Miss Job,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mrs. Savage,
Yes.
Mrs. Shearer is absent, Mr. Thomas is absent, Mr. Metrosky.
Yes,
Motion passes 7-0.
thank you.
You're welcome.
9.6, recommend approval to hire the following individuals as school police officers at the rate of $25 per hour. Number 1 and 2, David Wilkinson and Frank Gardone.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Allison, will you please do a roll call also?
Mr. Gazy,
Yes.
Miss Job,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mrs. Savage,
Yes.
Mrs. Shearer is absent, Mr. Thomas is absent, Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Mr. Metrosky.
Yes,
Motion passes 7-0.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Recommend approval to hire the following individuals for the athletic positions listed at the supplemental rates negotiated per the contract with GSEA or otherwise set by the board, 1 through 4.
So moved.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
9.8, recommend approval to hire the following individual for the supplemental position listed at the rate negotiated for the contract with GSEA or otherwise set by the board, number 1.
Sorry. So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Allison, will you please do a roll call?
Miss Job,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
No.
Mrs. Savage,
Yes.
Mrs. Shearer is absent, Mr. Thomas is absent, Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Mr. Gazy,
Yes.
Mr. Metrosky.
Yes,
Motion passes 6-1.
thank you.
Under substitutes, recommend approval to hire the following individual as a substitute for the district, number 1 without reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Recommend approval to accept the following individuals as volunteer coaches, sponsors for the 2023-2024 school year, 1 through 4 without reading.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Recommend approval of the attached list of bus drivers and support personnel for DMJ Transportation, Inc. for the 2023-2024 school year, plus the following individuals, 1 through 3 without naming.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Recommend approval to set the salary for Dr. Kenneth A. Bissell, Superintendent, at $154,000 for the 2023-2024 school year, effective retroactive July 1st, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Allison, will you please do a roll call?
Yes. Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mrs. Savage,
Yes.
Mrs. Shearer is absent, Mr. Thomas is absent, Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Mr. Gazy,
Yes.
Miss Job,
Yes.
Mr. Metrosky.
Yes,
Motion passes 7-0.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Under Finance, acceptance of donation, recommend approval to accept $1,471.93 from the Westmoreland County District Attorney's Office for the funding of a taser to assist in the enforcement of the provisions of the Controlled Substance, Drug, and Cosmetic Act.
So moved.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
11.1, recommend approval of the updated agreement between Greensburg Salem School District and the Indiana University of Pennsylvania to provide up to 3 IEP reading interns working toward their reading specialist certification for the 2023-2024 school year.
So moved.
Second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Recommend approval of the agreement between the Greensburg Salem School District and Catapult Learning, Inc. to provide intervention and support services for the 2023-2024 school year to the non-public Title I schools.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Recommend approval of the agreement between the Greensburg Salem School District and Intermediate Unit 1 to provide professional development services for the 2023-2024 school year to the non-public Title II schools.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Recommend approval to add $20,000, recommend approval not to exceed $20,000 to the outdoor classroom project awarded to CH&D Enterprises, Inc. for the purpose of sealing and painting lines on the surface of the newly constructed outdoor basketball court and recreation space.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Allison, will you please do a roll call on
Mr.
this?
Metrosky, on that, is that really the outdoor classroom? Because I don't want it to be
The-
confused with the classroom.
Is that the
said-
basketball?
It's
court?
the
Oh, it
outdoor
said that-
recreation
He just
space.
Yeah,
read it.
that's why I was, just to make sure,
Oh, I'm sorry,
because
I'm
it says
sorry.
the outdoor classroom.
So
So
to
we
be
can make a
clear,
motion
it's
to
not
amend
to
that.
So,
add
outdoor classroom.
an additional 20, not to exceed
No, that's not what I was asking.
Yeah,
for.
I know what,
basketball
It looks
For the
like
middle
outdoor
school.
classroom
at the
is
middle
it-
school.
Yeah, so if we can, so Lee, can we make a motion to amend to
Yes.
the middle school?
Yes, just to clarify for the record.
Yes,
Is that your motion?
yes.
So there's a motion to clarify this.
Second. Good.
Second. All those in favor of clarifying this?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Take two.
Okay.
recommend approval not to exceed $20,000 to the middle school outdoor basketball court and recreation project awarded to CH&D Enterprises, Inc. for the purpose of sealing and painting lines on the surface of the newly constructed outdoor basketball court and recreation space.
So moved, thank you.
Second.
Motion and a second. Allison, you're up.
Wait, 1 second. Okay. Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mrs. Savage.
Yes.
Mrs. Shearer is absent, Mr. Thomas is absent, Mr. Conway,
Yes.
Mr. Gazy,
Yes.
Miss Job,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Metrosky.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Recommend approval to approve the following contracts and contracted services between the Greensburg Salem School District and the following, 1 through 3, without reading.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Recommend approval of the following contracts and contracted services between the Greensburg-Salem School District and the following. Number one, without reading.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes.
Recommend approval of the following board policy updates 1 through 9 without reading.
So moved.
Second.
Could we break those out to be voted on separately?
Let's talk about this in the discussion meeting last week. You said we're gonna vote this way.
She still has the right to ask.
She has the right to ask. I'm not voting for it, just do it the way it is. It's my opinion. Are there any exceptions to any of these policies?
No, but I do think there's value in voting things on their individual merit.
I'm going to go with, let's vote them as a group. We've had multiple times to discuss this in discussion meetings, so for the courtesy of time, let's vote this as a group. So,
We have a motion
we
and a
have a
second.
motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
And conference and workshop request, recommend approval of the following conference and workshop request. Number one, without reading.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
And recommend approval of the following facility usage requests 1 through 4 without reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
And just an informational item, the Board Facility Committee will meet on Tuesday, August 22nd from 6 o'clock to 6:45 PM in the Administrative Staff Development Room. The board will meet as a committee of a whole on Tuesday, August 22nd from 6:45 to 7:30 PM for anyone that's able to be there in the Administrative Staff Development Room. The next board discussion meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 6th at 7 PM in the Administrative Staff Development Room, and the next board voting meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 13th, 2023 at 7 PM here in the John N. Scales Legislative Room.
Okay, we're gonna open it up for comments and questions.
Bob Iznino.
You got it.
Question about 9.6, appointments, school police officers. We always have contracts for teachers, 185 days, 186 days, whatever it is. There was no number of days for, I'm not against school police officer, I think it's good, but how many days? That's in the contract.
Good question. 180 days, but no more than 180 days of school at the $25 an hour.
Okay. Now, second question. This is kind of a proactive one, Dr. Bissell, because you and I have talked about this. About a year and a half ago, we got involved with the IU. We've been involved with the IU with the concept of E-Pride Academy. And always pops up, because this board didn't realize that they approved the idea of the $15,000 contract, but they didn't realize that each kid cost a certain amount of money to go. When JR was here, it cost us over $100,000 to belong to that. And I know the ulterior motive. We don't want to lose a kid because it's reimbursement coming from the state. I have no problem with that. But why I brought it up about a year and a half ago was there are other schools decided to pull out and form a consortium. And I asked you about the idea of what were we doing. And I know one thing, you changed some of the qualifications or job descriptions, and one of them is online learning. So my question to you is, I don't want to wait till the last minute, pop up and say to the board, we got to approve this contract. So what are we doing now to address this issue?
So right now, we have the option where we can provide online learning with our own teachers in our own classrooms in a synchronous model, where kids will be online in the classroom with their classmates,
Right.
synchronous.
Yeah.
We are still in the last year with the IU, I think it's June 2024, where that payment that you mentioned
Right.
is over. So that was building that system in K through 8 to allow for synchronous learning. with our teachers.
Okay, so basically, when this comes up next year at $15,000, plus we won't have to go with that program anymore?
That's our plan.
Okay, good. Just the other thing, how much did we end up, and I may be putting somebody on the spot, I guess. I don't want to put you on the spot, so you can get back. How much did we actually end up paying this year beyond the $15,000? Because each kid ranged from $350 to $29.90, which is quite a bit of money. And so that's why I want to make sure that we're not spending money when we can control our own situation.
I can get that for you. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay. Number of kids plus the cost.
Okay.
And
Beyond the
can I clarify something you said? You threw out a blanket statement that the board wasn't aware.
They weren't.
I was. I think most of us were aware that in addition to the 15,000, we had a cost per credit per student.
At the time, it was not board members, because I asked, and I said, how many of you really knew that we were paying above and beyond the $15,000? Not one person responded. So I'm gonna take issue with that. And I'm not gonna get any debate. I could care less about the debate. I'm just saying, let's be proactive and watch over, because next year this is done. And I know that we have the capability. If we don't go with other schools, like Hempfield did, and I think it was Hempfield and Norwin and so forth, decide to form their own. So, good, thank you, Dr. Bissell.
Anything else, Bob?
No, I'm done.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Could you expand on the, I think it was number 10, Superintendent's Report Finance, on the purpose of the TASER?
Yes. So that is for Officer Dieter. Our school police officers are allowed to carry a firearm. They do carry a firearm. But there are,
Good safety.
yeah, I'm gonna be careful. There, in situations where they may need to do, not with a student, but in a situation where they may need to do something, rather than using a firearm, that is a better way to go about that. So this was through the district attorney providing us with the funding to equip our school police officer with that equipment.
Well, is there something that prompted that? Have we had issues where that situation comes up?
I don't think I can discuss that.
No, I mean, that'd be
Here.
speculating,
Yeah.
first of all, and then it's a security issue.
Yeah.
So why did it come up that we needed a TASER? I guess it's out of the blue. It seems like we've never had one before, right?
I can say that it is a better option than a firearm in certain circumstances. And that's coming from the district attorney, from our police officers, saying this is a safer option for them.
Okay, all right. Just a curiosity.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Allison, did the state, now that the budget has been done, did we get our allocations and so forth? They didn't finish that part yet.
They just released them like this evening.
Oh,
The
this evening.
spreadsheets, yes.
Okay, so by next meeting, we'll be able to talk about that.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, anything else before we adjourn? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second, I heard a
Second.
second too. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.